That's Mike.
That's Toya, and this is Tech Beats and Bytes. How y'all doing?
Good. How you be?
Alicia just punched me in the eye, so my eye messed up. I'm just playing. So now I'm good. I'm much better than I was a couple of weeks ago.
Well, that's good. That's good.
God is great. God is great.
Nice. So yes, crazy week as always in these times of the Rona.
It's so much to unpack. It's just, which topic do you talk about? But I want to just jump into Nigeria. You heard about the tech guy that got his head cut off?
Go ahead.
We might as well. So they found him in his apartment in New York, dismembered, and the rest of his body parts cut up and put in the bags. Nigerian-based company, but I'm actually not sure if he was black. I just stopped doing the research when I read his head was cut off in his body parts because I'm like, oh, that was personal. Somebody was mad at you. So, word, people, if you taking investment money, make sure you pay them people for their money.
Not a shark loan. No, that's insane. That's insane. And I wonder, it's interesting, right? So there's this documentary on, I want to say it's Netflix, called The Unacknowledged. And it talks about how we are basically like behind where we could be from a technological perspective because industries don't want to advance. It's a really, really interesting documentary to take a look at. And when you're talking about that, who knows?
We as being the United States of America?
Just we as the world.
Oh.
Right. So just from energy to all the stuff, right? It's a lot of it deals with like Nikola Tesla inventions and just things like that. But when you think about it, how much big corporations control how we move and what we can do. And you hear about it all the time, even in medicine. There's these different doctors who they talk about that turned up missing or mysteriously killed because they were trying to bring some new product or medicine to the world, and they're like, stop, nope, not today, try again.
Not too far, fam, you're taking it.
Right, not this lifetime, maybe next. So definitely check it out.
You got it. Well, when you find the name, maybe you come back with a post and tell us the name. But did you
it's called The Unacknowledged.
Unacknowledged.
And
that's on Netflix?
Yep.
Okay, everybody don't watch it at the same time because we know y'all using other people's passwords to watch Netflix. So,
right.
All right. So we have been talking about tech in South Florida, and we've been talking about different issues. And one of the biggest things is to actually address topics. So we want to start bringing back guests. So luckily, the world went in our favor with lockdowns, and now we can do everything virtual. We won't have to meet up and wait for people to show up, and I can continue to be late while the guests are on time. And it works out. So I want to bring on two powerhouses who are going to jump into the conversations because since we got two people, we're not going to do a lot of what's going on around the world. Y'all on Facebook all day. So we got Kevin and Greg. So
what up?
How y'all doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. Y'all look like y'all could be related.
It's the Caribbean connection.
Exactly. We just got dropped off one island away, man. That's all.
That's what success looked like. So, gentlemen, I see we have different things going on and we have a lot to discuss. So I want to just jump right into it. Lil Greg, what you been working on lately, these man? We need some updates on you.
Me, let's see, man. There's a lot going on right now. I'm still at Microsoft, leading civic innovation and technology and working with municipal and nonprofit partners to leverage our technology in the work that they do. So I'm very excited about that. Just shared some news, I think, last week about being the top performer in the US in this role. I'm also leading right now regionally Code for South Florida, and we are a nonprofit focused on tech, focusing on some of the similar things. So modernizing tech for government at the local level, as well as nonprofits and more. And we just hit about like 8 paid staff on the team. So I'm really excited about that. And been working on a number of projects during the coronavirus, helping people kind of like virtualize and get with digital tools that kind of keep them up to date, kind of like what LaToya is saying. A lot of organizations are behind, and coronavirus, for us at least in our business, has made a lot of people say we need to get on this. So a lot of work around that.
Okay. And Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, very similar stuff. I mean, coronavirus definitely has had an impact on what I do. So, with us being IT services providers, when lockdown first hit, everybody ended up saying, hey, you know what, kind of to Greg's point, we weren't prepared to have a remote workforce. We weren't prepared to be able to leverage tools and data and applications outside of the office. And so we've been really busy just helping our clients get up to speed on that, and helping them sort of plan for the future in terms of what are the next steps. And then outside of that, I think, coronavirus also, like you said earlier, Mike, has brought people together in a way that, we weren't able to before, because everything was so dependent on lining up schedules and getting to the same place at the same time. So one thing that I've been doing is I've been reaching out to other Black-owned managed IT services providers across South Florida. And we've been doing like a monthly virtual meetup so we can be better connected and be able to support one another in a way that we haven't before. I mean, right now we're even talking about putting up money to market together, to be able to leverage resources and really go after the market. So stuff like that.
So what's been your biggest struggle during this time frame?
Biggest struggle? That's a good question. I think that the biggest struggle for us, or even I say for me, I'm a very social person, so I like to be out and about all the time, just meeting folks and networking and shaking hands and kissing babies. So, being locked down is not really what I enjoy, being at home all the time. So that's been tough. And then just sort of keeping your mental centered, right? Just keeping your head on, focused on, the next set of goals that you have. So that's really been me, man. I haven't had any major struggles. Thankfully, our business has remained steady throughout this time because folks are just like, yo, we need IT service professionals. We need IT folks right now.
Cool. So, Greg, do you want to give a deeper understanding of exactly what it is you do with your job?
Sure. Microsoft for the Business Code for South Florida.
Explain, layman terms. You need more people to know what you actually do.
Sure.
They're not going to take the time to Google this. They want to know.
The way I describe it is, how do we make cities better places for people to live? We go about that with helping government, with helping community organizations understand how to make it easier for whatever they're doing in servicing to have like modern tools. So the work that we do is we either invest or me go in and kind of work with these teams to make sure that they're up to date on the right infrastructure or application deployment models. So when they're releasing a service to the world, whether it be 1,000 or 1 million people, the service is reliable, it works, and they can kind of track numbers and understand what's happening. So that's kind of the role that I play.
Are these primary focused on government contract, individual contracts? What's the primary focus of how you're securing these things?
So for our business, we do it in a couple of ways. Right now, for Code for South Florida, we focus on kind of grants, but we've also secured some relationships with nonprofit groups and helping them kind of like in a service-driven model. And the work that we do is really centered around this idea of open source and open data. A lot of people don't know, but open source is the idea of like, what if you create code and release it in the open for anybody to reuse and distribute for commercial reasons? And a lot of the big tech giants that we see, Amazon, Google, you name it, have leveraged some sort of open source. Facebook for most of their products and services. So what we do is work with governments and nonprofits to understand ways that they can use it and take some of that code and apply it to their own projects that they're working on. And what we advocate for really is like the idea of open data. So we see like what's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, which is a lot of people coming together saying, hey, we want government to change. We want to defund police. What does that look like in terms of a service that actually gets that news to the right people? And how can we track that and make it easier for organizations to actually apply that feedback in the work that they're doing? So these are like just problems, one-off problems that tech can solve. And civic technology or public interest technology is a like emerging field of what they're calling it. But it's all related to how do we modernize government so it can work for the people, by the people in the digital age.
Now that you've jumped into where we want to go, Black Lives Matter. So how exactly are your people and your workforce, for both of you guys, How are they responding to these social injustice and these the new energy that you're bringing into focusing on, basically, yeah, not only am I black and successful in tech, but I've been angry for a while. You just haven't been paying attention. How's that been working out?
All right, I guess I'll take that up first. Well, so I'll say first off, as a black business owner, or a business owner just so happens to be black, the way I think about it, we've always had a real emphasis on diversity internally with our organization. So, as it is today, we employ black professionals in our company as well as people from other minority groups, and we firmly believe that the technology industry is one where it's made better by diverse voices, by inclusion, right? And so, having gone to engineering school, knowing that even engineering, I think it's like 3% of all engineers are black, and then leaving that and coming into the corporate environment, the same thing applies to IT professionals, not just folks that are in software dev and the more sexier tech startup side of the business. So what I've been seeing is that organizations throughout the industry are having serious conversations about, well, how do we make a difference in that? And so traditionally, it's always been about sort of philanthropy and giving money to organizations that are trying to bridge digital divide issues or looking at diverse workforce and inclusion issues. But now more so, you're starting to see, well, how do we get, black leaders at the table in our organization? That's becoming a big part of the conversation. The other thing is, well, how do we empower people within our existing workforces and within our ecosystems to have a bigger voice, right? And so that's very important, because when you look at our industry, IT services, managed services, I mean, we're but a fraction of that, and there are tons of associations that really don't value what we bring to the table, and they're starting to change that conversation.
So they're starting to change the conversation based off of the value you bring to the table, or just based off the fact that you're black?
Well, it's both, right? It's just that, there's a bit of tokenization happening regardless of where you look in the market right now. People are like, well, how do we solve it? By putting a black face in front of the problem, right? But I think secondarily, it's about giving those people an opportunity to really step up, right? And so if there's no space at the table, you need to make it, and they're starting to make that space, because otherwise there's no exposure.
Go ahead, Toya.
I was going to say, and that's something that we've talked about before, especially with how you're seeing so many different funding organizations and grants that are popping up and big businesses that are looking to now make space, right? There's that 15% pledge that's happening on Instagram, that movement where they're requesting sort of the big box retailers to now make space and pledge space to be able to display and show black businesses. So this is definitely an interesting time to see how corporations are responding to what's happening. And it's to the point that we talk about all the time. It's like, why did it have to get to this point for you to now pay attention and see value in our businesses and in our services and our capabilities?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, a lot of people just woke up yesterday and realized that, we've had an issue with black inclusion in America. And it's surprising how many people are just waking up to that conversation, but I'm happy that they're here. And I think that as black leaders, we have to, have those tough conversations and let them know, like, you got to make the space. Like, we've been shut out for so long, or we haven't been given the same opportunities to shine, and we shining in the dark right now. That's how it is. And so I think that is definitely part of what I'm seeing across the industry.
Greg, how does getting into that space look like for you?
Well, I think on the points mentioned before, like as a founder of like a for-profit, there's that problem. As a leader of a nonprofit, there's the same problem of like minorities not getting enough funding. And then we look at big tech, it's just the same issue, right? It's like even at Microsoft, there's only a handful of people that are black that are in roles that are either managerial, and most of it is individual contributors. So it's like, how do we address this problem? Fortunately for us, because of this issue, a lot of organizations, including Microsoft, has released a roadmap towards how they plan to address racial justice, which includes helping our supplier program and putting more money towards that, and advocating and supervising and helping mentor more people to get into these managerial roles. But for me, I think it's just about kind of like just answering the question that most people had, which is, are there enough qualified black people that can fill these roles? Yes. Are we giving them the chance to get into these roles? No, because it's hard to get into the system. Even as a black male that works for a big tech company, the way things roll is, hey, do you know a decision maker? Do you know how to set up your resume in the right place? Do you have a referral? Do you know how to knock out this 5-6 round interview where they're going to ask you a ton of questions that you have to do your homework on, or else you're not going to make the cut? And do you know how to negotiate your salary and say what you're worth, and then make sure that you have equity and things and like that for? So I think for me as a Black man, I think the place that I play in this is we just advocate for saying, hey, this is what we've done. These are the metrics. And we're gonna hear about it because that's what we're gonna be marketing, and making sure anybody that didn't know about us before knows that there's a ton of qualified people in the space. And that's the same stance we take as we work with government and nonprofits as well. We recognize that a bunch of the people that we're serving with some of the services that we've released are low income, and the way we can kind of get them to position and think more about making sure these tools are inclusive is leveraging research and leveraging data to make our point. So that's some of the ways that we've been looking at making sure that Black Lives Matter is a part of the conversation.
Before Toya asks you her next question, I want to say I'm so proud of watching you grow up, man. This has been a great journey. Seeing you go from being a little skinny little 18-year-old kid to sounding like a true executive. It's been an amazing journey watching you grow up. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah, big shout out, Greg.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you made a great point in terms of the pipeline, right? We know the pipeline has been an issue. And what initiatives are you seeing being on the corporate side of things that are in place and that actually work to fill those spaces, especially now that they're making them available?
I think just funding. I mean, there's great posts going around the internet now that we need, there's enough mentorship going on. We just need more funding. So I'm seeing a lot more people say, let's allocate more dollars in our next fiscal year towards these businesses, which create opportunity for businesses like InVizio, who I know are partner with Microsoft, to get more dollars allocated towards them because they're great partners. There's a lot of small minority-run businesses that operate well. It's just if they have more capital and more funding and more resources given to them, they can do a lot more with it. So I think what Microsoft has done with its racial justice initiative timeline, I think I want to see more of, because we've seen the social media tweets and the press runs and the hackathons and events, but how does this touch on systemic really change? And I think anybody that's kind of rolling out those timelines are really kind of like people that I see that things that I see that work. Two, making sure that when you're thinking about minorities and Black people, you understand it's a very diverse set of people. I mean, it's not just one shade, it's not just one place. And one of the things to look at is also the way hiring managers, kind of like the pipeline issue, recruiters kind of look at names. There are real systems out there that will look at a name and see that it's like an African name or something that doesn't fit in, like Gregory Johnson, and be like, okay, we're not going to look at this name, we're going to look at this other name. And it's we need to look into that. And especially as we think about the use of artificial intelligence or machine learning as we kind of get into some of these processes. If you're having a system that's biased and using kind of data that is only skewed towards one lens, what the results you're going to get is going to be that bias still baked into that. So how do we address that? I think it's about making sure that the systems we put in place go through that review and are checked to make sure that it's not making sure that everybody is included in the part of the conversation.
Yeah. No, definitely. The bias is real and insane. And then, Kevin, I wanted you to kind of chime in too to that. What sort of solutions are you seeing in regards to the pipeline on your side of things?
Great question. So I think one of the beautiful things about being in this side of the space, right, IT support, management, infrastructure, all of that, is that you really don't need a 4-year degree to be a part of this industry, right? And so you're starting to see a lot more programs pop up now in light of COVID especially, but also in light of what's happening with racial justice, where they're looking to get more of us included in the picture. And so one good example would have been the YWCA and Career Source here locally, the local job board. They've put together a program trying to get more minority working class women into the IT space. And so they have a program where they've been training women to sort of transition into working in IT. And that's a good entree point where they come out, they do a program, they come out, they get a certification, and they can move forward in their careers. And so I had a call just yesterday with someone who's looking to expand that further and look at how we can attract more grant dollars to go towards building pipeline for people in the IT space, right? Because there's just so much opportunity, not to mention the fact that companies like Google and Microsoft have stepped up and are now putting a lot more training out there for free, so that people can start to retrain themselves to be a part of this digital economy. And I think that's what the response has been. And I think that we need more robust responses like that to continue, so that we can start to sort of close some of these gaps.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And especially, when we're talking about getting there, right? Now, how do you stay there? Because a lot of times, certain corporations have better sort of retention programs than others. So are you seeing that level of support once you have those positions and you're in the companies?
Yeah, truthfully, there's not a lot of, I don't have a lot of visibility into that because I don't work very much on the corporate side anymore. But what I can say is when I was working in corporate, certain companies have always had internal networks for minority professionals, right? To really leverage to help them access the next rung of leadership and managerial responsibility within the organization. And that's where the mentorship comes in. There are a lot of companies that need to establish those programs, quite honestly, right? Because they have a workforce that is disconnected internally. And so these folks need to build their network so they can help each other move forward. So I think that's a very, very much a need. And then there are a handful of organizations that you will see, especially in the IT space, that focus on senior management, but there's not a lot that focus on that middle. Yeah, so that's a gap that needs to be closed.
So, Greg, I wanted to ask you. Well, actually, I'm going to ask Kevin his question first, and then I'm going to come back to you, Greg, because I want to see Kevin's response and then lead into your response. So, Kevin, the question I have for you is, what kind of impact do you think would be placed on the IT field, specifically what you do, if there was audit or some form of accountability where these companies had to spend at least 15% of their funding with a Black-owned company?
Wow. I mean, the industry is multi-trillion, if you really think about the totality of what is in IT technology, right? And so if corporations or governments had that sort of mandate, and that's something that they committed to, I think that for sure companies like mine could train and hire a lot more people that look like us into this industry and provide them true pathways to financial freedom and success for themselves and their families, right? Because for every project that we take on, especially if it's a long-term multi-year commitment, we can put food on the table for a family, right? And so being able to have more access to these deals and these opportunities is key to making sure our community has a seat at the table and is included in this industry.
But what does that mean to you as far as financial freedom? So let's just say they don't get to 15%. That would be almost a dream, because that would actually match the population of Black people in the United States of America. Let's just say if we could get to 5 or 6%. If companies were willing to take a public audit and to make a commitment that they would give that amount, or if they couldn't give that amount in work, they would take that amount from their profits and put it into a fund to build Black-owned companies. What do you think that would do for financial freedom and shifting the table?
I mean, dude, it'd be remarkable, right? Because let's think about it this way. There are people that come into this industry, right, that start out making 40 G's a year, right? And if you work hard and you're somebody who's going to invest in yourself and continually upskill, with the high school diploma, with the GED, you'd be making 150,000 in this field, right? Like over the course of a career. So, just having the opportunity where those companies would put dollars into the pockets of Black businesses to help, get people into the industry and move them through that pipeline, it would have a massive impact on our communities. It'd have a massive impact on even the level of support that companies like ours can provide to our local community, right? We can offer a lot more to high school kids, to community programs, just because we have the dollars to put into those philanthropic programs and those efforts. So it's a multiplier effect, Mike.
So Greg, I was wondering, and I wanted to mention, has Microsoft released any of the numbers of what they've outsourced to minority-owned or Black-owned companies? And if so, what does the percentage look like? How much of their outsourcing are they actually giving to minority and Black-led companies? Or should I say Black-owned companies?
Yes, they've released their numbers and they're addressing racial injustice. And it's really quite remarkable. I mean, for like some of the numbers is that they'll double the number of Black and African American owned approved suppliers over the next 3 years and spend an incremental like 500 million with those existing and new suppliers. They're going to be kind of like understanding how to grow their portfolio investment activities with Black and African American owned financial institutions. And plus, they're investing kind of like in the important partners that are helping to grow their business that are African American and Black owned led. And they plan to kind of like grow that community percentage by like 20% over the next 3 years. And they've actually created a new partner fund of 50 million, I believe, which will help give access to capital to provide loans to support these partners through their startup phase. So I think that if you go into the plan, it's like elaborate and there's a lot of things in there. One of the things I'm excited about is for LinkedIn, we've released kind of like this talent initiative, which makes it easy for anybody to see IT jobs, IT careers, digital marketing careers, project management careers. Go on LinkedIn, click a button and get access to free education that can give you a cert or something that you can use as you try to like get into your job. I think the big thing is just making sure more people are aware of these opportunities and kind of driving that home at the local level. Like there's a lot of opportunity, but unless people are knowing about it and unless there's accurate like or reliable pipelines, it won't really make it. So I think on the Microsoft side, I'm really happy to see like more energy there. But I think on the local level, which is why I'm really happy about the work we're doing with South Florida, what we try to do is introduce this and bring this to as many people as possible, as including the workforce or team that I work with. 50% of us are Black. 50% are actually women as well on this team. And I think what's important for me is to make sure that we kind of spread this to our community, as well as to the vendors that we work with. So many of the organizations or government people that we work with may be Black or African American. So what we try to do is make sure that it's easy to find these resources. And then in the services that we release, make sure we have diversity and inclusion numbers, especially for collecting the demographic data on who's who, where they live and what. So those are some of the things that I'm really excited about.
So, Greg, I love you, and I'm happy with what you're doing. But as a little brother, I'm gonna have to beat up on you real quick, and it's not your responsibility, but you are here representing the company. This is my thing. To me, what you said and what I hear sounds like this to me. NASCAR has finally decided that we're going to remove the Confederate flag and not allow people to fly Confederate flags at the tracks. Now, I want to add something else to that. Dante, you can put me full screen. I need to see everybody's face. Yeah. So now we remove the Confederate flags, but you remove the Confederate flags when nobody's showing up to the damn races because you can't come to the races in the first place. So we don't even know how that's going to go when people start coming to the races again. And now they got to go actually man the caps and tell people you got to take this down or you got to leave. So we got to see how that's going to go. Now, I see the numbers of the 150 million increase. I'm going to tell you, for me, 150 million increase of spending from Microsoft probably would equate to 0.001% of how much money they're actually making a year. If I'm going to be fair, I'll say that's probably 1% of what they actually spend as a company. My problem is this reminds me of what happened 6 years ago when Intel came out and said they were going to spend 300 million into diversity and inclusion, and we have no paper trail and we have absolutely no accountability from anything from Intel to show what they did. And a lot of people have taken money and put the money into already failing programs, and all they did was increase their revenue or increase the budget of the failing programs that they already had in place. So my thing is, I would like for you to reach back out to Microsoft. I don't need numbers because numbers can sound good and it can sound well with intent. That's almost like saying, baby, one day when I get rich, I'm going to take you out to dinner, but your girlfriend's still starving. You still need to feed her. So statistics can make things sound however they want to, but how much is that? Well, if you're increasing it 150 million, my thing is, I don't care what people promise anymore. Show me what you're doing right now and show me how much we're going to make it better. And then once you show me what you're doing, bring yourself to the table to tell us why you were doing so little at that point. Because if they're increasing it 150 million, were they already spending 750 million? Or were they spending 6 million? They're just going to put 150 million on top of it. You see how that works? It can sound great, but if you were doing a shit job, that 150 million may only be getting you to a satisfactory place. It doesn't take you to an exemplary place. And I feel that's what we have going on here in South Florida. A lot of people are making these promises of the things they're going to do, but what you're doing is already trash. So the things you're talking about doing is the bare minimum of what you should have been doing. So I would rather see those numbers in percentages. Like, out of the contracts, out of the outsourcing that they're doing, what's that percentage going to minority led? And this is another thing. I'm not comfortable anymore with the way diversity inclusion has worked. So I'm not comfortable when people try to put those terms in, because statistics show and the numbers show the main benefactors and people that benefited from diversity inclusion were white females, which made it a double minority. It made it a minority, but it wasn't anything to do with race. So if we don't pull the stats, you don't really know what it is. So how much of that money is actually going to majority Black-owned companies would be the percentage of that, and then how much of their outsourcing in general is percentage going to Black-owned companies? I think the numbers have to be a little bit different, because otherwise, to me, what I'm hearing from Microsoft and what I'm hearing from most tech companies is just a great marketing ploy to say we kind of care about Black people and we're paying attention to it because everybody else is paying attention to it. Because if you ask anybody, what was your 2020 plan for helping Black people before the pandemic or before George Floyd was killed, none of them have an answer.
So I hear what you're saying, and what you're saying, I can hear a lot of the points in terms of statistics and more visibility and transparency. What I'd say is there's a lot of companies doing things. I'm just happy to see at the company that I'm working with, there's an actual timeline and plan with years, not just a statement, which I think shows the promise of what you're just talking about. Like, okay, how can we actually make an impact change? And I take that at the local level of like what I'm doing under the control that I have for my entity, which is Confederate South Florida, and think about like, how can we do better? And I think we try to do better for Black people when we released a tool called Get Your Refund here in the state of Florida, working with Code for America to bring on voluntary income tax assistance organizations. These are organizations that give free tax help to people that can't go in person. And we look at the numbers and we see 20-something% of the people in the state of Florida being Black or Black faces that are able to file their taxes for free and get their returns. Mm-hmm. What I see in that is us just helping more people complete their returns and leveraging funding like with Citibanks and talking to these people to ask them, hey, this is a minority-led company. Can you help us with this? And what I'm excited about is the fact that this kind of like effort and energy has put us in a place where we can say as leaders, all of us, hey, we need money. We've been doing this for years. Come fund us. Will everybody fund us? Not everybody. And I've looked at a lot of the comments that you've made, Mike, about the South Florida community and the Miami Tech community in specific about more funders investing in people of color and Black people that have been doing this for a long time. And I agree with it. I just think it's about making sure that we also bring the statistics and numbers to them when we're doing this work, because then it makes it hard to say no. If we talk about Digital Grass's impact since the last time I saw you guys a couple of years back on how many content and how much content you're pushing out there in audience, I think it's really remarkable considering the amount of capital that you've had. When I think about InVizio's growth from the time that I've seen them, I see just like a team growing, staff growing. I think those numbers kind of defend the point that we as Black leaders are not only capable, but we're crushing kind of expectations when it comes to the work that we do in technology, IT, or whatever market.
But I think that's actually a great point, and now I think Kevin and LaToya can jump in on this. The point you made is actually excellent, but I still don't think the metrics and the lens they look through it is proper, correct? So this is what I'm saying. The way you look at it is the way it should be looked at, because you said a key point. I was able to see how much you guys were able to accomplish with the amount of funding that you had, right? So most people wouldn't know that we haven't been funded for the last 2 years, but we kept up with the same pace of work. That means it took a commitment from our team that this is more important than just making money. And even without the funding, we will make sure we get the word out and we will stay consistent. But most people don't change the lens of how they look at the metrics. So if I look at Kevin's outcome, I have to be able to factor in not sympathy or empathy, but what he's been able to overcome. But if I'm seeing a true vision, I have to think, if he's done this much with nothing, how much more could he do with an extra $2 million? And that's the problem I feel we have in this community. Nobody's seeing it. Okay, Greg has done this much and he only has $150,000 budget or $350,000 budget, and he's made this kind of impact. What would he do if I gave him a $1.5 million budget or a $3 million budget? But bottom line, these white boys in these VC companies, they get to fail over and over again. And it seems like the more they fail, the more opportunities they get. But if you failed once, it'll be like, all right, Greg, good. I hope something else works out for you. Hope you want to be a rapper because you're not going to be in tech again. Like, shout out to our boy, Brian got ran up out of South Florida, had to go somewhere else, but he just put together a $50 million fund. Nothing's changed about Brian since then than when he was here. But what is everybody in the world seeing in him that Miami didn't see in him?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things that both of you are talking about is context, right? So how do you paint the right picture and give the right context around the story that you're telling? And not just giving very broad strokes like highlight, press points, tidbits, but really showing the narrative. And again, that goes back to this whole platform, right? It's about telling the narrative, controlling the story, and making sure that it's given in a way that's digestible and understandable. So from a corporate perspective, I think that's a great point. It's about really giving good context around what you're doing, the implementation, as well as what that looks like on a local grassroots level. Because if Microsoft is funding you, Greg, then that's awesome, right? Because they have this really big umbrella initiative, and then you, as a nonprofit, are able to execute in South Florida. And if they're doing that across all 50 states and whatever their metro cities are, then that's fantastic. That's a huge program that they can really have tangible deliverables and traction and really make some different things happen. So I think context to both of your points are important. It's just on two different levels.
Right.
Yeah, and I think Greg said something that's really important. And at the end of the day, it's about transparency. And I think that, as a people, right, we have become accustomed to being sort of placated by the press release, right? It's, hey, we're going to put this amount of dollars into this over the next 5 years. And people say, oh, that sounds great. That's going to be good. But then what we have not traditionally done, which I think this moment provides us an opportunity to do, is truly hold people accountable, right, for what they're going to do or what they promise to do over the next coming months and years. And ask for the data, like show me the information. Like, it's key. It's cool that you're saying you're going to do this, but what are the actual programs you're investing in? Who are the people that you're investing in? Let me check. Let me see their skin tone. Let me see, are they Black people? All right, cool. But so actually seeing what the outcomes and the results are, as opposed to simply saying, all right, they said they're going to do something, and then we all pack our bags and we go off and we do what we do for the next 5 years and come back and say, well, why the hell didn't Intel do something, right? Where's the data for that? So on a local level, we've been talking about institutions that fund our Black tech ecosystem here, or don't fund our Black ecosystem. And what we have to do now is to try to hold those people accountable in a new way, right, by telling them, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Or better yet, to Greg's point, these are the 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people that are really killing the game right now. They're shining in the dark because they don't have enough resources to really blow up beyond what they can, what their capability is with the resources they have. And so, let's line those people up and march them in and say, look, we need these people funded, right? Like, this is what needs to happen here for you to truly demonstrate that you're being a part of the change that you're saying you're going to do, right? So I think that's what we ought to do. We really have to, as a community internally, look at our winners, look at the people that are shining in the dark, and push them forward and make sure that they get the resources that they need. And not just hoping that like they're going to hear about us or they're going to notice us, right? Like, we got to show up.
Yeah, I just feel there's a lot of leaders in South Florida, and the only two I can think of initially would be Manny Medina and Manna, where but besides what they do with their internal corporations, there's things that they outsource. We came up with this platform a while ago, and we just got asked to bring it back. That was one of the things we came up with. It's called Gateway Software. It's pretty much an auditing system of what your efforts really look like. So you had to blindly put up. It had nothing to do with your profit margins or anything else, but you had to blindly put up what you were spending to outsource, whether it was employees or whether it was just, outsourced company, outsourced vendors. Because a lot of times when people think about corporations and we have these conversations, it's like, oh, it's innovation and technology. All you guys talk about tech. No, that's why we put innovation first. We normally are using different forms of technology to enhance the innovation. So Ernisha Randolph is just as innovative as Brian Burkeen. She's just innovative in a different platform. She's in the hospitality and food industry. So if you take Ernisha for an example, because everybody may think we're only going to focus on tech or we're only thinking about technology. Large companies do catering, right? They have to cater events. They have large companies have to order coffee for their offices. Large companies need cleaning services. If your company has I would say an operating budget, and 50% of that operating budget is not salaries, but it's the actual operations of the corporation, and that company is, let's say, spending $1 million a year or $1 million a month, because we're thinking a larger company. They're spending $1 million a month just for operations, cleaning services, food, coffee, supplies. I would just like to know how many of those companies could even show that if they made these statements about Black Lives Matter and they want to see social injustice go away, could any of them come to the table and show that they're spending 15% of their operating costs that is being outsourced with a Black-led organization?
I mean, I suspect a lot of them couldn't, right? Because they don't track the data, number one, right? And so I think that if there was some way for us to build.
Now, hold on. So if we built the system, now, so we build a platform, and you can put it in there. So that means you got to put the company's name, and you have to upload and give us proof that it's actually a minority-led company. So we verify that all for you. And then you verify the invoices and you put it up. If you could be audited to show your commitment, how many companies will open up to that audit?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I see where you're going. I see where you're going with this.
Greg, would Microsoft open up to an audit like that? Not from you and just from what you know. Do you think Microsoft will open up to an audit like that?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of Microsoft. What I can say for the people that I've worked with is, if given a plan, nobody's going to tell you, hey, no. They're always going to be like, show me what you're working on if you find the right leader. And I think that's, or I hope to see that's most companies, but I don't have a lens outside of those companies.
But what do you mean by a plan? It's not a plan. You're just giving over receipts. You just said you had a thing for collecting receipts, showing people money. This ain't nothing but the same thing you're talking about on a larger scale. That's what I mean. That's how simplified things are, and people make them complicated. And I did that to you on purpose, because the thing is, when it comes out to just pure exposure, I don't believe people no more. It was too easy to tell the truth.
But to your point, I think under the vision, at least that I'm under, there's a lot of tools already that kind of do it and show the receipts. I think what you're talking about is transparency. And I think what we try to fight for at Code for South Florida is transparency between government and residents and community. And I think that is a great idea. I think like if we could create more of those tools, that would be something to shift. But can I say this is what's going to happen? I don't know. What I would ask to you and counter to that is, what is the objective of Black Lives Matter? Like, what is the action item that we're saying for? Yes, we know Black Lives Matter, but what can me, you, and a bunch of other leaders do to make sure that we impact and create change locally, beyond protesting, beyond going out, beyond tweeting? That's the question that I have, because that's what I know that's in my power, that I can wake up tomorrow and take some time and say, let me work towards this effort and energy. And I think for a lot of people that are kind of protesting and have energy, that's what I see kind of like missing. It's like, let's create these action plans and let's work on them. Is it going to be a hackathon? I personally don't believe a hackathon is going to solve like racism. Right. So how can we work towards that?
So I'll give you the answer, because the thing is, I don't put myself in a position to not be able to back up the shit that I talk about. So the first answer would be, everybody in Miami would be voting Kathy Rundle out of office, and you would actually have a state attorney that would actually prosecute officers that are killing people on the job and not letting them slide by. You have Kathy Rundle has been in office for 27 years, and she's never prosecuted a single officer that's killed somebody on duty. She's actually hardly ever prosecuted officers in general, and she keeps her cases in there for anywhere from 3 to 6 years, which messes up your civil lawsuits. That would be number one. Number two would be for these companies down here to realize, although we are a majority minority county, doesn't reflect that way, because a lot of the minorities don't see themselves as minorities. So they actually don't relate. The brown people don't relate to the actual Black community. So until we fix that problem, and the Hispanic community has to realize they're just as much of a problem of the racism we have in South Florida as the white people down here, until you actually fix that. And they say, we're going to work together and bring some of that wealth into the same people that fought for us to be here, the ones that were fighting in the McDuffie riots and the ones that were actually over here dying for us to have the kind of freedoms we have. Because you had the problem when you look at the simplicity of wet foot and dry foot. You had that simplicity of how it was treated, how Haitians were pushed back and Cubans were taken in. So you've already seen the discrimination. So that would be number 2. Number 3 would be the basis of financial freedom. When people can't make money and they can't eat and feed people, the first thing you do is go into survival mode. That's where the killing and the drugs and everything else comes in. It's not like Brickell wasn't built off of cocaine money. Billy Corbin well documented that. So it's not like that money just came out of wealth. You can't forget that at one point, Brickell had the same amount. Well, Brickell banks and the Miami Federal Reserve had more money in their Federal Reserve than all Federal Reserves combined. So let's not act like that white sand just ain't built off of cocaine money. So until you want to put financial freedom and financial justice, which would be ending the redlining, more financial freedom from housing, and maybe giving Black people back that land you took from them that you are now calling Wynwood, which is Overtown, and giving that tax dollar to Overtown, those are things you can do for Black Lives Matter. There's one thing to say, don't kill us at 6 times the rate that you would kill a white man. There's another thing to say, let us be free. The shackles are off, but you're still trapping our freedom. You're trapping our finances, which means you're putting us in survival mode. Because one of the things I've always said on the show, I talk the way I talk because I feel financially free, because most people in Miami don't even know how I make my money. Everybody thinks I'm just funded by night. So those are the things that you could do. But you have a whole culture that doesn't think they're racist, which is where we have the biggest problem from. How many people from Emerge America show up at Black Tech Week? We know Emerge Americas is for South America, bringing South America into Miami. It was to bridge the gateway between the two Americas. I've seen Toya there. I've seen Kevin there. I've seen you there. I've been there. We've been there multiple times. How many people from Emerge Americas bought their, oh, well, we didn't know if we should come because it was called Black. I'm not from South America, but I still showed up at Emerge Americas. I'm not from South Florida. I'm from Alabama. And everybody in South Florida should realize the moment they get past Orlando, actually, the moment they get past Port St. Lucie, they won't even be treated the same as they're treated down here. But when you live in this bubble, you can't even see how racist you are.
So can I respond, or is anyone else?
Oh, go ahead.
So my take on that is, I'm hearing you as a technologist looking from that perspective. Some things that you mentioned that I think we work towards at Code for South Florida is, one, open data. How can we release more data on who is persecuting what and what's the statistics looking like? How can we get more of that to the average person so we can keep people accountable?
Yeah, I mean, Kathy's would just be no, it would be 0. So that's real easy data to pull on her. But yeah, go ahead.
But when you put that data in front of people and kind of show them, then it makes more sense. It
hits a different way, yes.
And then when you talk about like, how can we make sure that people are getting what they need to get by? Because like you said, financial freedom is a big thing. There's a lot of people suffering and COVID has put them out of a job. How do we build services around that? How do we help the people that are Black, brown, or whatever color you may be understand eviction protection? We released a tool about like eviction protection months ago, helping people in the state of Florida understand how long or what rights they have before their landlord can kick them out. In terms of like getting more Black people to submit to get their stimulus check. Some people didn't know that, hey, you have to file and make sure your taxes are in for the current year. We're working on that. I think it's just about putting in the lens of how can we scale up these efforts? How can we make it more impactful? Because along the lines, I think it's a Black problem, it's a brown problem, it's a minority problem, but it's also impacting a lot more people in groups. And unless we have that data from government, unless we hold them accountable, unless we build those like feedback loops, change is never going to happen. If we march and then say we've marched and then that's it, and we tweet and we do social media, to me, it's just about, we need to have these conversations. And in the position that I'm in, I'm very fortunate that I have Microsoft. I'm very fortunate that I have an organization. I'm very fortunate that we can do the things that we're doing. But in my day-to-day, what I'm fighting for is sitting down with the leaders that actually care about this or don't care about this and presenting solutions to them that may be small. But if we impact 0.0% here in Miami and we use some automated tool and system, the solution is, if we have more funding, we can reach more people and we can take this data and show it to other people of ways they can recreate systems. So that's why I really enjoy the work that I'm doing. And I like the stance that I have at Microsoft, because I can see things through a global lens, and then I can work locally to see if we can make those changes happen. When I'm in that room, and when anybody in here is in that room through the platforms that they have, they can make stakeholders and people that are funders listen and look at other people. If I have a list and they're like, hey, who are the top people that I need to talk to in Miami about funding around these matters? I could say Mike Hall, I can say LaToya, I can say Kevin, hey, let's go InVizio. And guess what? Because I say it and I'm the top performer in my role, people would say, you know what? He knows a little bit about what he's saying. So let's follow up with these people and see if we can get money in their pockets. I think that's how change happens. But on a bigger scale, there's problems that it's very hard to solve. And I agree with you that there's things that need to change. But for me, it's all about the lens of what can I change? I come from a poor background, so I'm thinking, what can I do to make sure I'm doing my part at least?
That's right. You better come through with the solutions, Greg.
Yeah, I would agree with Greg. It's about changing the relationship between us and institutions, whether those are corporations or government, and using data as the objective place from which to have the conversation, right? Because I mean, if you think about what's happened with this George Floyd incident, right? It's data in a way that people didn't have before. Because normally they hear, oh, some black guy got shot in the news, and then they see the pictures, they see the mugshots, and they see them like looking thuggy or whatever, and then they're like, oh, well, he probably deserved it, right? That's kind of the way that Americans process these types of tragedies, right? There's some justification for it. But when you're sitting at home because of COVID and you literally watch a man die on camera, you have the objective data now to be able to say, holy crap, like there's something really happening here that we need to pay attention to and we ought to change. So by changing this relationship, as Greg mentioned, between us and institutions with data, I think it does create an opportunity for us to have real systemic changes take place, right? And I think on the second part, which you're talking about, Mike, but you're not really saying, is that political leadership matters, right? At the end of the day, when you talk about government's relationship with its citizens or its residents and how the policies that people, vote into law, right, that become your city ordinances, that become your county ordinances, and how those impact real people's lives is a big part of the equation, regardless of what tech we want to go out and build, right? And so we have to motivate people to see that political leadership matters in terms of the solutions that they get, in terms of who they listen to, right? Because Greg can go build an app, and for like one example of this is, you talk to Terry Williams at One United Bank, right? Or One United Bank. They opened up their PPP program. They had a bunch of people try to apply, couldn't get their money from the federal government. Why? Because a lot of those small businesses that were trying to access funding did not have the necessary tools in place. You'd be surprised how many Black, brown, small businesses don't even have an accounting system so that they can show, all right, this was my payroll for 2019, so I can get my money from the government. And so we're talking about an issue here that involves, a digital divide of sorts between a white-owned or majority-owned small business and Black-owned small businesses. Why don't we have the nice things that they have, right? And that there's something systemic to that. And so we have to look at how we, for instance, could talk to a political leader and say, we need funding, right? This is important to help small businesses within our community overcome obstacles to digitization and to transforming their businesses through digitization, right? So these are the things that we can come up with all day, but if the person on the other end who has the responsibility of voting for such a policy or such funding to come to be, it is not aligned with us, then it's not going to work. So we have to pick our leaders that are going to listen to us.
And I think, because I want to let Toya close this out, I like what you're saying. The only problem that bothers me with what you said is they've had the data. We keep giving them the data, and it keeps coming up with these dry promises. And then on top of that, when you offer them the solutions, these are the things you would have been funding, because there was organizations like you have somebody like Ashley Tony. Miss Tony is out there and she's teaching these businesses. I just did a course with her to teach people how to use QuickBooks and how to set it up, but she's fighting to get funding. But
well, because this is the problem, Mike. I think that we're taking this big jump, right? We it's almost like we're having this conversation about tech as being tech startup, right? And to your point earlier, innovation isn't just about building a new platform or building or discovering something or building a new technology.
Using technology to make it better.
It's exactly, how do you make things better? And where we as a community suffer is that we're not even at the foundational level in many respects, right? So H. Lee out there is helping people master the basics, but there's no funding for the basics. Everyone's like, oh no, we need to solve this other issue of
right. And which is what I was saying.
Money.
We got to change the lens. We don't need to develop a program. I don't need to fund somebody to make the next QuickBooks. I just need to give them $20 a month so they can have QuickBooks.
Right. And all these problems matter, but just at different levels. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that, people that can't access VC funding is not an issue because they're looking for millions and millions of dollars, while somebody who's running a barbershop just needs $40 to get their QuickBooks situation sorted out. Those are both important problems, and we have the ability within our community to address both at the same time.
Right. Go ahead.
No, really good points. And I just wanted to, so we like to give away kind of freebie advice on the show oftentimes, and education is a huge situation because education is struggling right now when it comes to tech and how to work through this Rona period. And because you both work with different agencies, government, corporations, businesses as well, to kind of help them become more tech enabled, I would love for you to give your thoughts on what public schools can do, because we're about to get into back to school time, what they can do to get ready to make sure that they're enabling themselves to be able to open their doors, whatever that looks like. I would love for you to give your feedback and your thoughts.
Wow. I'll let Greg go first.
Yeah, we're working with public schools. I mean, that's a big part of our program here at Microsoft. We definitely have a program called Microsoft Teals, which is working to place employees in these schools and do remote kind of like learning and teaching to get more kids understanding about computer science. So I'm very excited about that, and I think it's going to be a game changer. For what we're doing through like Microsoft stores, I've worked on a project recently where that's all they're about. How do we get remote learning tools to teachers, parents, and more, and leveraging Microsoft's infrastructure to help with remote learning. And I think there's a lot of work going on in that aspect. I would also say that, yeah, it's a big thing that we're like focused on. How do we help? And we've also invested in quite a few companies and organizations, nonprofits like Miami EdTech and Code Art Tech, which helps girls learn about computer science, and Miami EdTech helps teachers understand and get curriculum and training from Microsoft powered by us to do their job better in terms of computer science and get more skills. So for us, that's how we're working with it. And I'm really excited because a lot of these schools leverage Microsoft solutions, but they just don't use like half or even a fraction of what the power of the tool that it's capable to do. So it's like Microsoft Teams is big in that. I'm very excited about it. But yeah, those are some ideas that I think right now that I'm seeing with Miami-Dade Public Schools.
Right. So I'll pick up on Greg's point there. I think that the tools are there, right? Meaning like all the software is built for these things to be a reality, right? For public schools and schools in general to really offer strong distance learning programs for their students. But to Greg's point, they're not leveraging it. And a part of what happens there is that teachers don't even have the right training and the right tools given to them to be successful, right? And so what we're seeing, and we work with a number of charter schools, is that the schools that emphasize professional development by truly investing in the teachers are the ones that have more successful outcomes with kids, right? So that's kind of one point. The other point too is that everything's on the cloud, right? And so internet access, the basics, but it's what we're talking about this whole time. Foundational things are also very key in our community. The basics are not there. So you can run a public school system and have digital learning tools. And as we saw during the first part of the year, you have kids in low income communities that weren't even able to get online to show up to class, right? And a big part of that is no internet access at home, right? Or they may not even have the right devices to be able to get internet access at home. And so some of the challenges that our governments, our school boards ought to be solving. And so I know that the state of Florida has some money that they've put aside from the CARES Act to be able to help schools bridge this digital divide by identifying their more vulnerable students and to be able to offer them the services that they need. And so we as parents, we as people that are in the industry need to continue to advocate to make sure that the schools have the actual infrastructure that they need so that these kids can get online and school can continue as normal.
So Greg, if you can, in the chat before you get back on with your day, I have a lot of parents that are looking for, medium to low price laptops for their kids as they're getting ready to transition to schooling from home and everything. So if you don't mind, I know because a lot of them use Microsoft products. Apple is not very popular when you think about public education. So if you don't mind, if you could give maybe 2 or 3 options of good solid laptops to buy, maybe something at the $200 range, the $350, $400, up to the $600 range. because there's a lot of parents that are looking for laptops to buy, and it'd be best to know which laptops are kind of optimal performance with the basis of the Microsoft products, because a lot of the schools are using Microsoft products. Because I have a lot of parents that have been hitting me up looking for that. I just want to say, gentlemen, as always, I've enjoyed the conversation. Greg, one of the biggest things you brought up, you're absolutely right. A hackathon won't fix it. I think if anything, I am going to suggest all these organizations need to do what Georgia Tech does, where they pay for a pool of programmers and coders to come together. They put money together, and then the public can bring ideas to these pools of programmers and developers, and then they execute and develop the projects. It puts them in the position you get optimal performance from the developers, because the developers are not working for free and they're not trying to get something done in 24 hours because they're actually getting paid. But it's the investment is coming from that community that says they want to make a difference. So you can get a pool of 100 developers that are qualified and screen them, but you put away $1 million or $2 million and you pay them to execute these things. And I think some of that money should go to your organization. Don't keep asking Black people to fix the problems that you want to help us with for free. We need money already, so quit asking us to fix the problems for free. So I think what you said was very good, and I'll be addressing that on a piece of my lightning talk tomorrow. Because as I will continue to say, and I want everybody to continue to understand, you must quit asking Black people to pull themselves up by the bootstrap when you have left us bootless. So I just want to make that very clear. Toya?
That's Mike.
That's Toya. This is Tech Beats and Bytes. Thanks, guys.